everybody. Aimer back with another Mission Impossible episode review as we are heading into the holiday season. Happy holidays to all of my fans and watchers out there, whatever you're celebrating. Please spend time with your friends and family. I certainly am, but I'm taking a little bit of time out just to hammer out a quick review, just to kind of stay in the swing of things. So this time I am continuing with the Revival series. We're doing Season 1, Episode 4, which is called The Condemned. This is another remake of an original series episode, Season 2, Episode 19. If you want to look at the original version of that, you'll want to take a look right over here, and you can see my full review for that episode. So we start this one off in a Turkish cafe, with an American being picked up by mean-looking police and dragged away. The man looks interestingly familiar. Jim finds his instructions in a van near the beach after talking to a surfer, where he's told there's an American wrongly being held in Turkey for the murder of a British expat named George Stanton, and is being framed by Police Chief Yusuf Hamidou. The mission: free the alleged killer, who is scheduled to be executed in 3 days, and bring Hamidou to justice. Jim is shocked to find that the American in question is Barney Collier. Just a quick note, this is the first cold open and one of the only ones, I think it might be the only one, maybe there's one or two others, in which somebody is actually not killed. I mentioned that I thought in every cold open somebody died or was killed, but in this one certainly that doesn't happen, at least not on screen. Anyway, moving on. The apartment scene is kind of awkward for two reasons. First of all, the IMF is wearing some ridiculously tacky clothing. I don't know what's up with that sweater that Nick is wearing, or the cardigan or whatever that Jim is wearing. It's kind of weird. More importantly, Grant is understandably agitated at the situation. We learn that a lot hinges on a woman named Lydia Adem, who claimed to be Barney's lover and gave critical testimony that implicated Barney. Off we go to Istanbul. Jim is fortunately able to enlist the help of Lieutenant Serlak, who is one of the officers at the prison and got passed over for promotion in favor of Hamidou, and offers to get Jim and Grant into the prison while Hamidou's away for a little bit so that they can talk to Barney. They assure Barney they've got a plan to get him out, but they've only got 1 day before the scheduled execution. Jim is able to take some pictures to allow Grant to make a false wall where Barney can hide, during a visit the next day by Nick and Max as American priests. When the police come for Barney, they don't find him, of course, but in the confusion, Max manages to take out the hooded executioner with knockout gas, providing Barney with a way to escape. Casey and Jim check out George Stanton's home, their arrival noticed by a guy hiding in the shadows. They find a newspaper clipping about a priceless stolen necklace. On their exit, they're accosted and arrested by the police. They're conveniently taken to Hamidou, and the story is that they're private investigators looking for the necklace after an offer was recently made to sell it. That piques Hamidou's interest. Max bugs Lydia's phone, and since Barney is too weak to confront her himself, Grant has to fill his shoes, as Jim says. After reminiscing about his 9th birthday for a while, during which Barney was absent due to his job, Grant is set up to resemble his dad, and then scares Lydia at her cafe, telling her he knows she set him up. Police sirens from Nick outside cause Barney to leave, but says he'll be back and wants the necklace, which Lydia disclaims any knowledge of. Lydia then calls a heavily bandaged dude and tells him what happened, and he tells her to come over. Jim and Nick follow her and arrive at an apparently abandoned building and split up. Lydia spills her guts to the man and is clearly so frightened that she'd say anything to anyone, forcing him to shoot her. Jim approaches her as she lays dying, and his footsteps are overheard by the man, who is about to shoot him too. Fortunately, Nicholas arrives in the nick of time, see what I did there, and is able to subdue the man, who falls off a balcony as they fight. As Lydia dies, she confesses to Jim that the man is George Stanton, who faked his death and framed Barney to cut Hamidou out of his share of the necklace. Nick confirms this by seeing that George had colored contact lenses and had plastic surgery. The two search for the necklace, finding it cleverly hidden in a pot of old soup. Jim, as the investigator, leads Hamidou to find Lydia's body, along with a pair of glasses with Stanton's prescription, saying he got a call to buy the necklace. Hamadou realizes Stanton's treachery and tells Jim that Stanton is alive and will call again to try and make a deal. Jim tells Hamadou that Stanton wants to meet at Lydia's cafe, which the IMF specially prepared. The pair arrive. Hamadou tells Jim to stay in the car. Inside, Hamadou is surprised to find Barney, who tells him he'll trade the necklace for his freedom, but Hamadou has to help him get it from where it's hidden. Hamadou realizes that the necklace must be in Barney's cell and prepares to shoot him, but ends up shooting mirrors. In their banter, they get a fully engineered public confession from Hamadou, who hightails it back to the prison and Barney's cell, tearing up every inch. Serlac finds Jim, the necklace, and the videotape of Hamadou's confession in the prison office, and Hamadou takes Barney's place in the cell. Mission accomplished. I'm going to give this episode a grade of B+. I also gave the original episode a grade of B+. And I think that this episode is quite on par with the original for different reasons, which I'll go through with you now. What's good? It is so awesome to see Greg Morris again. He belongs on the screen with Peter Graves. It's like peanut butter and jelly. He's good. I wouldn't say, though, that he is, how do I say this? Unlike some other guest stars, he doesn't really get to do too much. His contribution is about in line with what the other, IMF members are doing. So while his contribution is fine, and, he plays his old role really, really well, nothing really goes kind of above and beyond. That's okay for the purposes of the plot. I don't have a problem with it. I'm not saying anything's bad about it. I'm just saying there's nothing really that's tremendous other than the fact that Greg Morris is just back, which is great in and of itself. Some of the scenes, regarding or surrounding, I should say, Greg Morris's return are really well done. The scene where Jim and Grant talk to Barney in the jail is really well done. The obvious, the emotion and the care and the bond between these three men really comes across to me. And I find that scene to be really poignant in an emotional way. There's also a scene where we see Barney and Grant made up as Barney, with a mask that Nicholas made together. Also very, very cool. There is a point in that episode where Barney is looking at himself, his son, as himself wearing a mask. And you can see his lip quivering a little bit, again, showing real emotion. And that's awesome. I want to believe that, part of Greg Morris really felt it's like, what, this is so awesome. I'm doing this with my son. And as a father, I can definitely relate to that. Also good. I like that a lot of the good nuances of the story are retained. One that is pretty obvious is that the necklace that the IMF is looking for is very cleverly hidden in a pot of old soup that Jim looks at and says, doesn't want to touch it. And then he notices it and notices that there's another fresh pot of soup, which clues him into the fact that why would somebody leave the old pot of soup there, and then clues in. And something very, very similar happened in the original. So, some of these little details are really, really good. I really like that scene. Some things that were not so great. Again, just little things here and there. There's a scene where Lydia Adem calls George Stanton. He says he told her not to call him at the building where he's hiding out. Well, he sure is standing around staring at the phone as though he's expecting her call. So that was pretty lame to me. Again, that whole scene at that building, it is kind of obvious on rewatch that there were some stunt doubles used during the fight scene. Although, if you don't watch it, really, really carefully, it's not so obvious. I did find it to be a little bit obvious that it obviously wasn't Thal Penglis being tossed around. So that was a little bit of a downer for me, but what can you do? Also, when the IMF is setting up in the final scene, in the cafe, there is a travel picture of Istanbul, and Istanbul is written in English on the wall. Why would you have that in Turkey? If you live in Turkey, it's not like you have, visit beautiful Istanbul. You're already there, right? I wouldn't expect to go into a travel agency or something in Toronto and say, hey, visit, awesome Toronto. I don't know. That just kind of seemed really weird to me. Also in that final scene, that engineered public confession by Hamadou is a bit sudden and contrived for me. I know that they have to have some kind of way of wrapping up the episode. It wasn't terrible, but it did seem a little bit overly contrived. And of course, this wouldn't be an episode of the remake if there wasn't some really, really, really silly dialogue. And that kind of leads me into the comparison between this and the original episode. A lot of the plot points, as I mentioned, are fairly faithfully executed here. Some of the names are changed. In the original series, there was a man named George Corley. Now this is George Stanton. In the original series, there was a fair bit more action. At least in certain parts. There were some places where the IMF did a fair bit of preparation, and I mentioned in the old review that there were a lot of kind of plotty points. But at least in that one, there were points where there was actually action to watch. Here, in this episode, a lot of that action is taken out, and it's replaced by dialogue which is really, really bad and painful and obvious and silly. There's not enough adjectives to really talk about it enough. I do like the fact that the writers here made a change that was very, very sensible. One thing that really bothered me about the original episode was that once it becomes clear to all of the parties involved that there is this, ridiculously expensive and rare necklace that is the object of the whole thing here, the whole plot. The cops in the original episode just seem to be kind of nonchalant about it. Like, oh, well, gee, there's this $10 million necklace out there. That's nice. Well, we're cops, so let's just do our jobs and catch the bad guys. It does make a lot more sense the way that it's structured in this in the revival episode, where there's a corrupt cop who's after the jewels, actually participated in the theft, and that I think is a much more sensible plot device than what happened in the original with the cops. In the original series, there was a subplot with this guy named Constantine, who was George Corley, who played George Stanton in the new one, who was George Corley in the original one, was his partner in the theft, and he was also looking for the necklace. So they took that part out and replaced it with some of the other things that we see here. In this one, in the revival, we have, of course, a Disney villain death. It's not really a death, but in the end, Hamadou is put in the cell that he put Barney in, and he's locked in there, and he's the next prisoner. It is kind of like almost like a Disney ending where somebody is hoisted by his or her own petard, as we say. Also, I'll note that Casey does very little in this episode, and there's a very good reason for that. In the original episode, Barbara Bain was not present. It was only the 4 male team members. And so there's really not a role in this story, in this plot, for the female agent to have or to do anything. She's basically absent or just kind of there just to be an extra body in the scene. In the parts of the episode in which she does appear. And you'll kind of watch over time how that shapes out with Casey and Terry Markwell and her presence or absence from certain episodes and her contribution. It'll be interesting to see and to talk about as the season goes on. And I think that's about it. I'm happy with my grade of B+ for this one. And I'm going to wrap up this review. Thank you guys, as always, for watching. Please like this review video. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And please leave your comments about this and other episodes. Again, best of the holidays to everyone. I probably will have time, maybe before New Year's, to put out 1 or 2 more reviews. So please do keep an eye out for those. If you subscribe, you'll get a notification, of course. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time.